The harem genre represents perhaps the most intellectually bankrupt corner of Japanese animation. A creative wasteland where genuine human connection and thoughtful storytelling are sacrificed at the altar of cheap wish fulfillment and voyeuristic pandering. What we encounter in these productions isn't merely bad romance. It's the complete annihilation of romance as a concept, replaced by a hollow simulacrum that bears as much resemblance to authentic human relationships as a plastic bonsai does to a living forest. The typical harem anime operates on a framework so predictable and creatively barren that it borders on algorithmic. Take one unremarkable male protagonist, whose personality rarely extends beyond kind or hardworking. Surround him with a collection of female archetypes distinguished primarily by hair color and breast size, and proceed to manufacture increasingly contrived scenarios designed to titillate the audience while steadfastly avoiding any meaningful character development or narrative progression. Series like The Quintessential Quintuplets, We Never Learn, and Nisekoi exemplify this approach, endlessly recycling the same tired dynamics where multiple girls inexplicably develop intense romantic attachments to protagonists who possess all the charisma and distinctive personality of wet cardboard. The protagonists in these shows, Futaro Yusuji, Naruyuki Uega, and Raku Ichiju respectively, exist primarily as blank slates onto which the viewer can project themselves, creating the fantasy that they too could someday be surrounded by beautiful women desperately competing for their attention despite having nothing substantive to offer in return. The profound intellectual and creative poverty of harem anime becomes even more apparent when we examine the female characters that populate these narratives. In shows like Infinite Stratos, Date Alive, or The Asterisk War, female characters are ruthlessly reduced to a collection of tropes and fetish delivery systems. The tsundere who masks affection with hostility, the shy bookworm, the childhood friend, the energetic airhead, the cool beauty, the little sister, related by blood or conveniently not. Their personalities, if such shallow characterizations deserve the term, extend no further than their designated archetype and their inexplicable attraction to the protagonist. Even ostensibly strong female characters in series like High School DxD or Trinity 7 ultimately exist primarily to be sexualized and to validate the protagonist's specialness. Ria's Grammary may be a powerful demon, but her narrative purpose revolves around her increasing infatuation with Issei Hayudu. Lilith Asami might possess incredible magical abilities, but the camera is far more interested in lingering on her body during magical transformation sequences than exploring her character. These women are not characters but collectibles, Pokémon with anatomically impossible proportions and improbable hair colors, to be captured by the protagonist's nebulous kindness or determination, and displayed as trophies of his inexplicable desirability. Their entire existence, their goals, their dreams, their very agency is consumed by their relationships to a protagonist who often possesses fewer distinguishing characteristics than a slice of white bread. Perhaps the most egregious aspect of the harem genre is its fundamental dishonesty, the way it presents itself as a romance while systematically excising everything that makes romantic stories meaningful. In genuine romance narratives, tension arises from the authentic emotional journey of two individuals navigating vulnerability, miscommunication, personal growth, and the complexities of intimacy. In harem anime like Rent-a-Girlfriend, Rosario plus Vampire, or To Love-Ru, tension is artificially manufactured through increasingly absurd coincidences, contrived misunderstandings, and the protagonist's pathological inability to make any definitive choice. Kazuya Kinoshita spends episode after excruciating episode vacillating between romantic interests while displaying all the emotional maturity of a particularly dim-witted sea cucumber. Tsuken Ono somehow maintains a harem of monster girls who repeatedly risk their lives for him despite his complete lack of distinguishing qualities beyond being human. Rito Yuki trips and falls into compromising positions with mathematical precision that would make aerospace engineers weep with envy. These are not stories about love. They are cynical exercises in audience manipulation, designed to string viewers along with the perpetually dangled carrot of who will he choose, while having no intention of providing meaningful resolution until the manga sales inevitably decline. The emotional investment these series demand is rewarded with narrative cowardice, as authors like Reiji Miyajima or Su Minazuki extend their stories far beyond any reasonable conclusion point. milking their one-note premises until they collapse under the weight of their own repetitive tedium. The intellectual dishonesty of harem anime extends beyond its approach to romance and into its portrayal of basic human psychology. Series like Monster Museum, The World God Only Knows, or Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches Present Worlds, where multiple individuals develop profound romantic attachments to the same person simultaneously, often based on the flimsiest of pretexts. Kimihito Kurusu inspires devoted love in multiple monster girls primarily by not being actively repulsed by their non-human characteristics. A bar so low it's practically subterranean. Kaima Katsuragi conquers girls through calculating manipulation, treating human emotion as a game to be solved rather than experienced. Ryu Yamada stumbles into relationships through literal magical powers, bypassing the actual work of emotional connection entirely. These narratives aren't merely unrealistic. They're actively harmful in their portrayal of relationships as acquisition-based rather than built on mutual growth and understanding. They perpetuate the toxic fantasy that love is something to be won through persistence or collected like trading cards rather than cultivated through genuine emotional intimacy and reciprocity. The message isn't subtle. Women exist in abundance for the taking. Their affections are yours for the minimal effort of basic human decency or sometimes less. And the protagonist's indecisiveness is not a character flaw but an enviable position of power and privilege. The damage inflicted by harem anime extends beyond mere artistic mediocrity and into the realm of cultural impact. Series like Sword Art Online, In Another World with My Smartphone, or The Rising of the Shield Hero combine the most insidious aspects of harem construction with power fantasy isekai narratives, creating toxic cocktails of male entitlement and female objectification disguised as empowerment tales. Kirito collects devoted women like badges of honor while the narrative bends over backward to justify his specialness. Tsuya Mochizuki is gifted with godlike powers, medieval technology expertise, and of course, multiple beautiful fiancés. Because why settle for one when you can have 9? Naofumi Iwatani acquires female companions who are literally slaves or imprinted on him like ducklings. Yet the narrative presents this as morally justified because he treats his possessions kindly. These stories aren't merely creatively bankrupt. They actively normalize deeply problematic relationship dynamics under the guise of entertainment, teaching impressionable viewers that women exist primarily as rewards for male protagonists and that genuine emotional reciprocity is less important than accumulating a collection of devoted female admirers. The insidious nature of these narratives lies in how they masquerade as stories about growth, adventure, or even love, while fundamentally undermining the very concepts they claim to explore. The terminal stage of this creative disease manifests in series that attempt to present themselves as deconstructions or subversions of the harem genre, while ultimately reinforcing its worst aspects. Shows like Oreguru, Dekano, or Bekemonogatari position themselves as more intellectually sophisticated than their brethren, featuring protagonists who are cynical, self-aware, or ostensibly more complex than the standard harem lead. Yet for all their meta-commentary and literary pretensions, they inevitably devolve into the same fundamental pattern. Multiple female characters becoming inexplicably enamored with a male protagonist, whose specialness the narrative insists upon despite limited evidence. Hachiman Hikigaya's misanthropy is reframed as profound insight rather than adolescent angst. Tomoya Aki's objectification of women is presented as the necessary perspective of a creative genius. Koyomi Araragi's inappropriate behavior toward minors is dressed up in artsy direction and pseudo-philosophical dialogue. These series demand to be taken seriously while perpetuating the same fundamental problems, adding a veneer of intellectual sophistication to what remains, at its core, the same tired formula. They are perhaps the most insidious iteration of the genre wolves in critics' clothing, offering the illusion of deconstruction while serving the same rotten meat.